Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sac River Cowboy Church kickoff study called Pivot Points. My name is Scotty Killingsworth. I'm the pastor of the Sac River Cowboy Church, and the Lord laid on my heart this study, this Pivot Points, back during the coronavirus lockdown. I had some time and began to get some ideas to put down some things I wanted to say, I wanted you to know. So that's where we are. So let me just say, welcome to the study of the Pivot Points. Glad you're a part of this. I hope you find this enlightening and will help you on your Christian journey. We're going to deal these studies with they're going to come out of a biblical worldview. We're going to be talking about the climactic events that around which the whole world has rotated. That's why I call them pivot points, because these are the major points along the line, along the road of history, where things begin to pivot. Now, today, we're going to deal with the long arc of history and try to find where we fit in that long arc of history. Where's our place today? So it's by knowing where we are and seeing the long arc, we'll be able to ask ourselves some pretty hard questions, like how much time is left? Are we living in the last days of the church age, and those sorts of things? So we're going to be looking at that in this study. We hope to match biblical prophecies with historical events. I hope we can do that. An analogy I want to use that will help us explain this, what I'm trying to do is, it's like if you get out of you're in an airport and you come out of a gate and you want to know how to get someplace else in the airport, and there's a big map there on the wall, and there's a pin that says you are here. And so hopefully we can find where we are, and on that big map that God is doing and building, we want to be able to see where we are. We are here. That was our hope. Now I'm going to read you a prologue to this study that and I want you to think of it as just pretty much kind of fun. I wrote it just to scratch a creative itch or whatever. I'm going to just read you the prologue. This will in some way set up the study, but it's just kind of fun to let your mind think along these lines. So follow along while I read the prologue. The Creator's latest invention was a multidimensional holographic projection device, and he wanted to try it out. He went into his lab and pushed an infinitely dense singularity into the add stuff here portal of his projector that, once deployed, expanded into our four-dimensional universe. Joy exploded on his face when potential became reality. Into the fabric of the singularity, he had coded all future history into multi-dimensional realities and separated them from each other by membranes like pages in a book. On each page of this comprehensive reality book, trillions of stories were waiting to be told. On each page, the Creator could interact with and enjoy the company of each character, if, of course, they wanted to play. The Creator had his prime directive of autonomy built into each page. He had something special in mind for the four-dimensional page because he planned to write in it a being that would bear his image. He was sure this page would prove to be especially problematic because there would be opposition to this particular creature being chosen to wear the Maker's mark. He knew even at first he would need to enter this particular reality to fix it. Whatever, it was too late. He had already fallen in love with the people in it. Now, fixing the four-dimensional problem, fixing the problem that would be endemic in the 4D reality is called redemption. Fixing the broken condition in 4D page would require several alterations, which would come as the Creator personally entered into the narrative on several predetermined pivot points. The fix would not come all at once, but we spaced out over time. What's he doing now? What did he do last? What will he be doing next? Where are we currently on the Creator's plan of redemption? Well, that's so I want you to hear the prologue, because that will kind of let you see what I'm thinking, where this could possibly go. It is my opinion that we are near the end of the church age. That we've been in this church age for roughly 2,000 years. And I believe we're coming close to the very end of it. It's my opinion that as I teach this, and I'm going to be trying to encourage you to accept the fact that the next pivot point that's coming will be what we call the tribulation. And whether by evacuation or endurance, the world is going to change radically. The church is going to change. Being a Christian is going to change. It's going to be a huge pivot point. Now, let me explain the tribulation. Now, I'm not going to dig totally into this right now. This study, we'll talk about this a lot more as we go through it. But generally, or roughly, it is a period of time of 7 years that's divided into 2 3.5-year periods. So 3.5, 3.5 equals 7. It is a time that has never been anything quite like it before, and of course will never be again. It is an extremely difficult time to live on the earth. It will be very hard to survive all the way through the full 7 years. In fact, there will be a massive die-off and several potential extinction events that will occur during that tribulation time. The turbulence, the trouble that will be on the earth has never before been experienced, except if we compare it to Noah's flood. It will be somewhat similar to that in a modern setting. So a pivot point in general is the point at which certain things turn or pivot. It's a mechanism that turns or oscillates. Now, these studies are going to look at all the major pivot points of history. Of course, that's my opinion. What are the major pivot points of history? And we're going to look through them. We want to look and know what causes pivots. We want to look and discover how they turn and what directions that are taken by our world after we go through a pivot point situation. Most of our study that we're going to be doing will be dealing with eschatology, eschatology, or a study of how things end. It's how things wind up. How does all that's set in motion? What kind of things are coming as we come to that end? You get the idea. Literal versus figurative interpretation will be something we also need to deal with. People ask me a lot, how do you interpret the Bible? Do you interpret it literally, or do you interpret it figuratively? What is your interpretive model? And generally, I interpret the Bible literally, and unless of course it tells me differently, unless it says to me I am speaking figurative. Often, if the Bible wants you to know it's speaking in a figurative manner, it will say things like, and it was like so and so, or it was, the streets were like gold, or it was, and it'll tell you it was like something, and then it's speaking figuratively. But other than that, otherwise, I'll be interpreting the Bible literally. Now, when we read the Bible, and prophecy especially, we are going to be looking at concepts through the eyes of the prophets. They lived, some of them, 3,000 to 3,000 years ago, some of them, maybe even longer than that. And so they're going to have a difficult time explaining what to them were future events, things they saw way out in the future. They didn't have the terminology to describe what they're seeing. And so they used terminology that they could handle, that they understood. Because the first readers of these prophecies also understood that too. They probably were not aware or cared that we down here in the 21st century would be looking back at those prophecies and the technology and the idiomatic comparisons and the analogies we'd have trouble with. But we're going to do our best, and we can still make sense of it using literal and figurative understandings. For instance, in the book of Revelation, John talked about cups and bowls and contained things that were thrown down on the earth. Literal bowls or figurative bowls, again, I'm going to say it doesn't matter, because the final result's the same. There's the destruction, the calamity on the earth, whether they're coming from literal bowls or figurative bowls, or whether they're angels or stars or whatever the Bible calls them. They're going to cause devastation on planet Earth. One of the points I'm going to be making further, deeper into this study, is that during the tribulation, that last 7 years, actually the last 3.5 years of the last 7 years, there will be more than one, but one huge asteroid strike the Earth, and then a little while later, another one will strike the Earth. And these two asteroids that are going to hit the Earth will be destructive beyond anything we could comprehend today in our world. They will wipe out billions of people off this planet. Will die as a result of these asteroid strikes. And the Bible tells us about this in great detail. So figuratively, it says the angels are going to fall, or stars are falling. But I'm convinced that it's speaking figuratively, and that we're going to see asteroids that are hitting the Earth. More on that later. If you're interested in that, we'll dig into that quite a bit deeper. Now, another word or another concept that we have to hold in your heart and mind as we do this study is dispensationalism. And because we're dealing with the church age, and then the tribulation, and then the millennium, etc., dispensationalists believe that God reveals his plan of salvation and his plan for history in dispensations, or where he unfolds his plan little by little. He doesn't just lay it all out, but he gives us what we need to know and understand at this point. Then he rolls out more of it, and then he rolls out more of it, and when it's finished, we'll completely understand what God is doing, but it will be rolled out to us in dispensations, or in periods or times or experiences. So we're going to be, you need to hold that in mind. Now to the tribulation. I'm going to talk more about it. Nearly everybody believes in a rapture. You can talk to just about any Christian of any ilk, a denomination, whatever, and they know about rapture. They may completely not believe in it at all, and I'll talk about that too. But just about all conservative, Bible-based believers believe in a rapture. What we don't agree on is when it happens. There's a lot of people believe it will happen it'll happen before the trouble, a pre-trouble rapture. Some believe there'll be a pre-wrath, or in the middle, a 3.5-year rapture. Some believe it'll be a post-trouble rapture at the end of the tribulation. Some believe, as I said, are amillennialists, and they don't believe in a rapture at all, or even a millennium. They believe things will just simply go on as they are. So, and then my brother mentioned to us the other night that there's also a pan-millennialist. That means it's just going to pan out okay. Well, and I hope it does, and it will for those who love the Lord. I am personally a pre-millennialist. I believe, I hope, it's my deepest prayer that the Lord would take his church, his believers, out before the trouble is unleashed on the earth. That's my hope. But I don't want to tell you that I'm 100% sure that's the way it'll be, because I'm not. I don't think the Bible gives us enough clarity about it. I think if God would want us to know exactly all that, he would have told us. So I think there is some tension here, some things we've not discovered yet that we could say for certain. So, but I am a premillennialist at heart. I've always been, and I always will. I look for that. I study in that direction. But I keep in mind that God can veto, or he has the last word. Maybe I misunderstood that. Now let's take a long arc of history look. I'm on page 3 of the manual, if you have that. We're going to take a long look at creation, at angel wars, the creation of man, flood, Noah's flood, Tower of Babel, Abraham. We're going to come through Jesus. We're going to look at the church, the tribulation, Armageddon, the millennium, the final judgment, the new heaven and new earth, eternity, all the big pivot points will be what we're going to be looking at in this study. Now, when we begin to deal with issues like of this size and the concepts that are this complicated, we need to understand one more thing, and that is the problem with time and the problem with history and the issue of free will. Those have to be factored in to all that we're doing, because the Bible teaches that time, teaches us about time and how it's different with God than it is with us, teaches us about history, how history rolls out, and then, of course, free will. So let's talk about that. Now, God is omniscient. Now, that means He knows everything. God knows it all. He knows the beginning from the end. He knows how we'll do. He knows what we'll do. He knows where you are, what you're doing for a living. He knows who you married. He knows that. He's always known that. But even though He's always known that, He is at the same time giving you free will. In other words, He did not force you into anything. He's not pulling the strings on a puppet and we just dance to the tune. No, He's given us total free will. In fact, God has given everything He's created free will. Angels, men, everything that God made has a free will and gets to do whatever they choose. So how does that work out? Total knowledge, at the same time free will? Well, guess what? That's those two concepts, and putting them together, blending them, they're above my pay grade. They're bigger than you and I have the brain power to bring together and merge and make work. But we have to trust by faith that they do. I believe with all my heart that that's how God works this thing. Now, how you play your life, how you live your life really matters. It makes a big difference. And so I simply say, play well. Love God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. Live your life for the glory of God. Live it to the fullest. It matters. No one has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. If you're looking at this video and you're expecting me to give you all the answers and solve all the problems, you're just going to be out of luck, because most of the time I'm as much in the dark as all people are. God has given me a few insights. But I'm like you. I'm trying to study. I want to know God's Word. But if somebody comes up, like if you're watching another video or some other preacher or whatever, and he says, he knows how it's all going to wind up. And he's going to explain to you. He's going to chart it out, show you dates and times and places and all that. You can just pretty well figure that he's been deceived. And don't be caught up in his deception. We have signs. The Bible gives us signs and seasons. And it says these are the things that we're going to be able to look at and see and get some estimates and understand how close we are to the end. But there are no dates. In fact, you remember Jesus himself, when asked when this is going to happen, he said, I don't know, nor do the angels in heaven know, but only my Father knows. And there's a reason why Jesus didn't know and give us an exact date. Because the timing here is unknowable. You can't know it. It cannot be known. The reason it can't be known is because of the free will of human beings. What that means for me and you is that if we don't change the course of humanity right now, if we don't turn this thing around, if we continue into rioting, into economic failure, into war, if we don't turn it around, then the tribulation is going to come very soon. But the potential exists for us as a world, as a people, to repent, to come to our senses, to go back to living a biblical lives where we love each other and we don't take advantage of each other, we don't steal from each other. All those things, if we can come back to that, we might postpone or extend out into the extreme future the tribulation. So Jesus, because of free will, said he didn't know. And it's because It's not knowable. We have signs and we have seasons. And so we can watch the signs. We can read and understand the seasons, but we don't know the time. Now, there's another issue I want to bring up because I found a great illustration for me that helps me understand the two seemingly contradictory ideas that, number one, God knows everything, and that's at the same time he gives us free will. Let me hold up for your thinking the idea of music, and let's use two idioms of music. For instance, let's use jazz, and let's use contemporary classical music, jazz and classical music. Now, when you play classical music, you play exactly what the composer wrote, what he wrote down, all the notes. He'll give you what the notes to play or to sing. He'll tell you how fast to play or to sing them. He'll write Italian words over it, andante, allegro. He'll use Italian words to tell you how fast and how sweetly or how loud to sing. And he'll write the notes to tell you where they are. And so you do what he said. You just reproduce what the composer has asked you to reproduce. Now, that's classical music. When you play jazz, it's different, totally different. Now, in the jazz, you know when you're going to start, you know about where you're going to end, you understand how the chords progress and how what you're trying to do. You understand how it generally happens. So you get started, and then the trumpet will take off and play a riff, and he'll just ad-lib. He'll ad-lib and go around, and then the clarinet, maybe the saxophone. But then, because we don't know how it's going to wind up, we just know where we're going to wind up. We don't know how we're going to get there. That's called jazz. Now, I thought to myself, that really encapsulates this argument or this explanation of how to understand it. I believe God wrote classical music. He knows every note. He knows everything. But he lets us play jazz all at the same time. And our role in our life here is we get to play it like we want, as we choose. I think that's how that thing works. So we're going to look at this further and think about it more as we get past this. Now, we're going to look now at page 4 in your manual. Oh, I kind of lost my place there. Because we're going to use our Bible for our calendar or for our seasonal, for our pivot points, because again, that is a biblical worldview. But I want to remind you and myself and all of us that no matter how this comes down to the end, Jesus told us, he said, I'm going to come like a thief in the night. Now, a thief comes in the night unexpectedly. So what am I telling you here? I'm saying, yeah, we got seasons, we got times. We can look around and see storms maybe coming on the horizon or whatever. But in truth, Jesus could come anytime he wants to. He could come when we least expect him. So let's move on. Now, as I said, we're going to use our Bibles, and we're going to bounce off of our Bibles primarily for most of our study. But we're going to also be aware of extra biblical studies and ideas, and we're going to look at them because in these mythologies and other sources, extra biblical sources, we will hear the same story be told in over and over again. Each of these stories are similar, and they have, now if you don't get hung up on names and those kind of terminologies, they're going to all line up and say the same thing the Bible says. For instance, let me summarize. This is just me now. I'm summarizing what I've read and heard about from other world cultures and ancient histories. Something like this happens in all of them. First of all, gods come from the sky. They fight with each other, these gods, and with humans. They have a very high level of technology, these gods that come from the sky. They do things we can't do. They move rocks we can't move. They have a different technology than we do. Then we learn they interbreed with humanity. They interbreed with human females and produce what's called demigods in the Greek and Roman literature. Other half man, half gods. Most cultures have ideas and have concepts of this happening with this interbreeding. Now, when this interbreeding happens, the babies, the demigods, will wreak havoc all over the world. All right, so demigods, aliens, ant people, dragons, sky gods, serpents, giants, heroes, ghosts, demons, or angels. If you don't get hung up on the names, they all are telling the same story, as does the Bible. Ancient histories from all over everywhere tell us the similar story about previous times. The Mayan calendar that everybody got so interested in around in 2012, when they said that a great change was going to happen, was based on a 26,000 year long precession of time. Wow. Who's been around long enough to figure something like that out? 26,000 years. The Hopi legends tell us of 5 past ages of mankind. 5 past ages. We're the last, they say. The Aborigines in Australia talk about dream time, and they talk about phases of dream time that speak of their very ancient past before our time. The Chinese believe that their very first emperors and their first rulers were descendants from dragons, that they were half dragon and half human. Fits right into the story, doesn't it? We've heard of Atlantis, the story of Atlantis. What was that all about? A civilization that existed before Adam that was higher in technology and everything than humanity, even to this day. And then it was swallowed up by the ocean. See, I give a sense about me that a whole lot more has happened than we're aware of. Why is the Bible silent on this? Why does the Bible not tell us more about this? And it's my contention it doesn't tell us because the Bible is not interested in that. The Bible is telling the story of redemption. And that's what it cares about. Does that mean that these sort of things didn't happen? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Was there a race on earth before Adam? Well, we don't know. The Bible doesn't say. But hidden within the deep time mythologies of cultures around the earth, yeah, maybe so. Now, let's just, in closing here today, think about the length of time that we've been on the earth. Think about time. We've been on the earth, roughly, we'll cover this more later, but we've been on the earth roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years, human existence. Well, you can draw, scientists or cosmologists tell us that the earth is almost 4 billion years old. The universe is somewhere between 13 and 14 billion years old. Now, a billion is an inconceivable number. Quite honestly, for the human mind, a million is an inconceivable number. We can't get around it. We can't see it. We can't even think about it. So the point is that a long time passed before human beings got on the earth. Long time. Deep time. A lot of things could have gone on before we got here. Now, as we dig further into this study, as we go further into the future, we're going to consider some of the possibilities. We're going to look at that deep time, this pre-Adam race, and consider them a little. But because the Bible is silent on them, we will mostly be silent. I'll find a few places which I'm going to show you where the Bible does speak of things that could fit into that. And we'll dig into a few of those as we go. But for now, this is going to be where we end with pivot point, with the introduction, or at least the first half of the introduction to the pivot points. Maybe next time we'll get to the first pivot point, but I want to lay the groundwork and sort of set the stage. Just remember, we are the last things God has made. Let's say we're 10,000 years old. You take a line, 100-mile long line, that shows the beginning of the creation of the universe. And you follow that 100-mile long line down to the last half inch. And within that last half inch of that line is where you're going to find humanity. That's where we fit. It's there. We're the new kids on the block. We're the new creation that God made and invested His image within. What went on before? We don't know. Were there cultures here before? Looks like there may have been. But we know one thing about us and our time, and that is God put His image in us. Adam bore the image of Christ. I hope you're bearing Christ's image in our world today. I hope you've let Him into your life and to lead you. Because as we head through these troubled times that are ahead, that we're in now, but promise only to darken and deepen, I pray that you are letting Jesus be your light and shine on you and shine through you. This world needs to see the light. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.